Good afternoon. My name is Will Spinks. I'm the Registrar, Secretary, Chief Operating Officer for the University, and I'll just explain in a moment what that means. But thank you for coming along to this session, and if you're watching on the live streaming, then thank you as well for making the time available. What I'm going to try and do today is cover these items, report progress on what we've achieved in 2015-16, looking at the university level, looking at the professional support services as well, sharing towards the end the priorities and challenges that we've agreed for 16-17, again both at the university level and within the professional support services, and hopefully also recognise some success and say thank you for those of you who've contributed significantly to the work that we've been doing over the last 12 months. Inevitably, in saying thank you to people in an organisation of this scale, I'm going to miss out some of the particular recognition that we've had. I've got many slides, as Paula knows. She's been collecting photographs of people receiving awards across the year. I have many slides associated with that, but if I was to include everything in this presentation, that would be all we'd be doing for the next 40 minutes or so. So I'm getting my apology in advance that if I miss something and that you were involved in, please do tell me afterwards and I'll prompt it somewhere else within the other presentations that I'm making. I'm hoping to leave some time for questions at the end. Those of you who've seen me present before know I can talk forever, so that's not a problem at all, but you'll get the best out of me if you ask questions later, and I try to leave that time available. So I would encourage you to take the opportunity and ask any questions that you may have, either about my presentation or things more widely across the university or the sector. I'll be very happy to try and answer it if at all I can. As I said, I'm going to look at three different levels of priorities. I'll say something about the core goals and the enabling strategies within the university. You find those in the Manchester 2020 document, which is our long-term strategic plan, originally prepared in 2011, refreshed in 2015. There's hard copy available, but you can also find it on the web. If you're struggling to find it at all, then again, please make contact and we can readily direct you to it. Every year, we then set some university priorities on an annual basis, which are part of the cascade across the whole institution of the things that we will be focusing upon. Each faculty then makes operational priorities for each year. The professional support services do that. The library and cultural institutions also do that. So it cascades all the way down the organisation. We then bring them all together. We make sure they complement each other and they get signed off through Planning and Resources Committee. So I'll reference those three different levels. Our first core goal is world-class research, and within that we measure how we're making progress by looking at these key performance indicators: research grant and contract income, quality in terms of citations, so of the research that we publish, how often are they being quoted by other people around the world, the number of postdoctoral degree students we have at any particular point, and what we're achieving in terms of our commercialisation of intellectual property. I can't go through them all today, but I can pick a number of those out. And the first of those is research grant and contract income. If you go all the way back to when the new university was formed, 10, 11 years or so ago now, research grant and contract income across the institution was about £125 million. And at that time, in the original strategy that went out to 2015, a target was set that that income should double to £250 million by 2015. And the first thing to note here is last year, when we closed our accounts in July 2015, we did actually exceed that long-term target that was established when the university was first formed. And we were at about £262 million or so last year. The purple line here is our performance to date, I think up to the end of May in this particular case, how we're tracking against our performance not only last year but previous years. And you see there's a very helpful gap between what we achieved last year and how we're currently tracking this. That's showing that we are, again, exceeding our performance of previous years. Not on here, but of interest, is that whilst we are exceeding last year's performance, we're not tracking currently at the budget level. So if the budget level was on here, it would be above this purple line. As a consequence of that, we've stripped this performance back a little further, because you'll notice there was quite a big kick up in the final months of 2014-15. And the reason for that was twofold. One was because we received some very large capital grants within that period, and the other, cutting a long story short, is we got quite a significant tax rebate on this in that final few months. We will get another tax rebate in the end of this academic year as well, but it won't be at the same level as we had last year. So what we've been trying to do is to understand the underlying performance that sits behind these gross figures, and therefore we've stripped out the capital impact and the RDEC impact, which is the tax rebate, to see what the underlying position is. And basically it shows something quite similar. Clearly the numbers are lower because there's other material sort of tracked in here. It still shows we're tracking above where we were in 14-15, but this gradient is still below the budget that we've set. So there's a challenge for us there, which is that we are doing better. We hit the 2015 target that was established in the original 2005 plan out to 2015. We're tracking this year above that which we achieved last year, but we're not quite hitting the budget target that we established. In terms of PSS, the first priority that we had in our operational priorities for this year within PSS relates to research, and it was about where we have that research grant and contract income, how much are we being able to recover of that in order to cover our costs within the institution. Because basically the research activity that goes on within the institution, we don't make a surplus on. We actually end up subsidising it from other activities. We do research because it's part of our core mission. We don't do research in order to make a surplus or make money. And in fact, the more research we do, the more money we lose in terms of our activities. But what we do seek to do is to recover as much as we can of that research cost to make sure we're getting close to covering our costs if we can. Now, I won't bore you with all the detail of the exact KPI that we use there and how it's formulated, but essentially in 14-15, the figure that you're looking at there of 20.1% is that which we said we wanted to achieve. Our target for 15-16 was 21.3%, and that would equate to a couple of million extra recovery on the research activity that we are taking place. And to date, in 2015-16, again, we're running at a higher level of recovery than that which we'd seen in 14-15, which is good, but we're not quite operating at the level that we established from a budget perspective. So we're making progress, again, but not quite at the level we would have hoped for. Turning then to goal 2, outstanding learning and student experience. We have 3 KPIs in this area that we focus upon. Student experience as measured in NSS, question 22, overall how satisfied you are. A number of you have heard me present on this before. In one sense, it's a rubbish KPI, but it's the one that we are required to print, to communicate to students, to communicate to their parents. It features in all league tables, and therefore we have to take some account of it. And it is telling us something about what our students feel about their experience within the institution. The second KPI is employability as measured through a survey called DELI, the Destinations of Leavers in Higher Education, which all universities participate in about 6 months after graduation. Again, it's not a perfect KPI, but on the other hand, again, it's used in all the league tables. We have to communicate it. It's information we have to provide to students. And then particularly here at Manchester, we will focus on widening access and looking particularly at participation from low participation neighbourhoods. In terms of overall undergraduate satisfaction, of course, the most recent data we've got is the data we got at the very beginning of this academic year for the 2014 graduation group, and therefore we saw another 1% increase there through to 86%. The purple-blue line is the performance of the University of Manchester. The green line is the average within the Russell Group, which is who we would compare ourselves to in this KPI. And what you see over the years is a significant increase in the performance from the University of Manchester, closing on that Russell Group average. When you get to 2009, 2010, we were literally slap bang bottom of the Russell Group at that point. You can see the progress that is being made. We'll get the next readout in terms of satisfaction coming out of the data from our undergraduates that have just on the process of graduating this year, but we get that data in early August, the first week in August. That performance is very good performance in terms of the improvement, but our long-term KPI is to get to the upper quartile of the Russell Group, not the average that's shown on there, and that currently sits around 90% or so. But when we laid out the plans in 2011 to where we wanted to be in 2020 in the Manchester 2020 document, we're actually slightly ahead of where we said we would be by this time. So we're right on the glide path, just above it, as to where we needed to go. It gets harder to get from 86% to get up to 90% than it probably does to get from 79 when we started this process up to 86, but you can see we are continuing to make good progress. And you also see that good progress very markedly in the Delhi data, Destination of Leavers in Higher Education. This is what are called positive graduate destinations, and by that it's graduate level opportunities. We went up another between 3 and 4%. These are rounded sets of data that you've got in front of you, but up to just over 82% this year in the latest data that we've got. We don't yet have the comparable data for the detail of the rest of the sector. We know that the rest of the sector has only gone up by 1% in the last 12 months. We've gone up between 3 and 4% within that period, but we don't know what's happened with other institutions at that stage. We'll get that data in the next 6 weeks or so. But in the expectation that, well, in the knowledge that we've gone up by about between 3 and 4%, the sector as a whole has only gone up by 1%. We're hoping, therefore, that relatively our performance has improved through that period. And that, again, is very helpful data for us. It's good to be able to communicate that to our students. It helps us in terms of our external judgments about our performance, and it will improve our position in league tables over time. The second PSS priority was about supporting schools and faculties in terms of their student recruitment activity, and particularly given our KPI that we have about participation from low participation neighbourhoods, continuing to monitor that. In terms of student application, the data you've got in front of you there, the top left and the bottom graphs are associated with the cohort that arrived in 2015. What that shows is we increased the number of applications that we had for undergraduate provision in the university. We continue to be the most popular university in the UK. By that we mean the university that had the most applications. And the data that you've got in the top right is showing the total number of applications that we've had for undergraduate entry in 2016-17. Our numbers in 16-17 are just below where we were at the equivalent time for the 2015 entry. There's about 400 or 500 difference only within those numbers. We're not concerned about that overall position at all. The bigger concern for us is, are we getting the right quality of students that are coming through? And of course we'll find that out as we get exam results and we go through. If you look more broadly across the university and dig into this data a little more, we have an increase, quite a significant increase in EU, non-UK EU undergraduate students applying for 2016 entry. I'll refer to that later. You might want to ask some questions about that. Our undergraduate international numbers are down in our undergraduate applications this year. They're down about 13%. Part of that we know is significantly as a result of changes in funding within Malaysia, where Malaysian students are not being supported, and that has a particular impact in certain schools. If you look at our PGT applications, they're up significantly, and particularly actually with home students. We're up about 13% on home students at this stage. PGR we're a little bit below, but PGR, the numbers are quite much smaller clearly than these, and it's harder to discern trends. Overall, whilst it's not a universally the same message across all intakes and with all the groups within those intakes, overall, at this point in the cycle, we remain content with our applications for 16-17. We don't see any significant concerns, but as I probably indicate, there's a couple of areas we're just keeping an eye on at this particular point in time. International students have continued to grow strongly throughout the last 10 years or so, and we now have more than 10,000 international students, Tier 4, coming from outside the UK within our student population. That's the most Tier 4 students of any UK university. In absolute numbers terms, it's by no means the most in terms of proportion. We're at about 28% or so. There are many other universities that are considerably higher than that elsewhere in the sector. Low participation neighbourhoods was a particular focus not only at the university level, a KPI, but also in terms of a priority. Manchester is an institution that is very different from many other Russell Group universities. In this respect, we are a more accessible institution. We think that's part of what we can offer. We think it's distinctive about us. It's part of what we feel Manchester should be. And as somebody myself who came from what today would be called a low participation neighbourhood, today would be called widening access. I don't think those terms were quite coined even in those days. This is something that on a personal basis is very important as well. And our performance there remains absolutely excellent and has improved in the latest data that we have available to us. There's a lag on this data. So you're looking at our prior year performance was 7.9% for 13-14. That rose for 14-15 in terms of the data that we have available, and we remain very much in the top quartile of the Russell Group. Not many other Russell Group institutions are like us demographically. Liverpool is quite like us, Queen Mary is quite like us, but there's an awful lot of other institutions that would be very stretched indeed to get anywhere close to the performance that we have here at Manchester. Our third goal, social responsibility, and we measure our performance in social responsibility by quite a wide range of different KPIs. It's a portfolio of KPIs rather than being focused in quite the same way as goals 1 and 2. And our performance in 15-16 has been very strong. We've continued to receive, and I do say continue to receive, significant national recognition for our performance in this area. We think it's something that's distinctive about Manchester, and that is being recognised externally, not just within measures and prizes and awards that are within the university sector, but also actually on a cross-sectoral basis as well, more widely across UK. And the Guardian Sustainable Business Award for the Works activity is a key example of that. The Works has previously won awards within higher education, but it's now winning awards outside of higher education as well. And our flagship School Governor programme has done exactly the same, winning awards both within the sector but also outside of the sector as well. In terms of other achievements, I'll just want to refer specifically to two things there. One is the 10-year anniversary of the Manchester Access Programme and also the Manchester Leadership Programme. That's a significant commitment that was made at the beginning of the new institution. It is carried on, and at Senate last week it would have been, we've built the outcomes of MLP into wider recognition of students' contribution across the university as a whole. And I want to I'll say a particular thank you here to colleagues within the professional support services who I know have made a significant contribution into the work that goes on in social responsibility, and quite a substantial component of that was recently recognised in the Making a Difference Awards about probably 60 weeks or so ago. So if you are engaged in those sorts of activities, I do thank you for that, and it does make a hell of a difference to people's lives both within the university and outside the university as well. Our particular priority here within PSS was about the Ethical Grand Challenges programme, which is another one of the signature programmes that we have in social responsibility, and it was to expand it this year, but primarily to prepare for a much larger expansion that's coming in the next academic year, particularly in Welcome Week 2016. And here we have made substantial progress. We've had sustainability, social justice and workplace ethics pilots across all 3 years now. That's gone very well. But the key here is we are now planning to offer the Ethical Grand Challenges approach to all incoming students, undergraduate students in year 1 this September. That's potentially 8,000 or so, all during Welcome Week. We've had to restructure components of Welcome Week to make that fit with activities that are going on across the university in different schools, and this will be a very distinctive offering for our new students who are joining us this coming autumn. I'm also going to say a few things about the enabling strategies, and here I can't cover everything across the enabling strategies, not least because there are 6 in total, but I will pick out a number of key areas. First of all, our 4th PSS priority was about rolling out the new PNDR training across the institution, recognising that different parts of the institution are going into the new PNDR process at different times. And I've just realised I've got some experts right in front of me in the audience here. However, I'm very pleased to be able to report that we've run, at the point that this data was collected, 60 training sessions. About 805 reviewing managers had been trained at that particular point. 97% of them said they understood the revised PNDR process, and those of you involved in training getting to that sort of level is a pretty damn good achievement, I would suggest. And about 1,300 or so reviewers at that point had accessed the online material that they have available to them about how they can get the best out of the process. As Paula knows, I'm in the middle of my PNDRs with my direct reports at the moment. I've done 3 this week, and I found the new system to be very helpful in that respect. And there are now over 500 PNDRs already at the point that this data is collected in the IT system that's supporting this. So we're making good progress in this space too. Our 5th priority in terms of PSS was about financial measures, growth in major and iconic donations, and then delivering the necessary savings for us to be able to hit our 2015-16 PSS budget within the central directorates. This is the graph that shows how our philanthropic income has grown over the period. The yellow line there, the gold line, is the original target that we set for the institution. That's growing at about 15% per annum throughout the period, and that's the growth of that is linked to investments that we've been making within the university and additional resources in this space, and part of that in terms of the business case that we would be able to get growth in philanthropic income as a consequence. And you'll see that from this period here we were doing very well against that overall 15% per annum growth curve. And then in 13-14, we had this substantial spike. As a consequence of that spike, we believed that there'd been a step change in our internal capability and what we were able to seek to target externally, and therefore we ramped up the targets for philanthropic giving beyond the original 15% per year. And the ramping up is the purple line that was established, and that's a very steep curve. And we think this is an important area for us. It's an area that we think we can get quite a lot of discretionary income, and here a gift can make quite a substantial difference to what we're able to do. If you look at the finances of the university as a whole, we have a margin on our activity of about 3 to 3.5%. What that means is for every £100 million of activity, we may get a surplus of between about £3 and £3.5 million that we're able to reinvest. So if you get a gift of £3 to £3.5 million, or gifts of that level, it's the equivalent of the activity in the university growing by about £100 million. So relatively small sums in the wider scale of things in this philanthropic area can make a huge difference to some of the activities that we're able to perform. And the good news is that when we ramped this up for 14-15 initially, we actually exceeded the ramped up target last year across the university. And the data in red that you've got here, you can see the ramped up target is there. This is data at the end of May. So we're going to be very close, if not over, the target that we also established for 15-16. So this is excellent performance and comes about as a lot of people across the university, academic colleagues, PSS colleagues, colleagues within development and alumni relations working together in order to achieve this sort of result. In terms of PSS's financial performance, the blue line is long-term data that we have about the proportion that we spend in the central directorates on PSS activity as a proportion of the overall level of activity that's going on in the university as a whole. Now, I'll be very precise within this because it's an important message. We are continuing to spend more and invest more in professional support services, and that's a commitment that I have historically made, argue with my colleagues and had support for. But whilst I'm making that investment, I want to see the overall proportion of that investment linked to activity across the university to decline in proportionate terms. We should be getting additional benefits of scale as a consequence of making those sorts of investments and as the university as a whole grows. And what this shows in the central directorates, you see that trend. The trend is also there across the university as a whole in the faculties when you add that to the central directorate. So I have that data as well, but it's not as clean as the most recent data that we've got there, because if you go back about 2 or 3 years, the basis on which we were collecting the data in different faculties was different from one another. So you can't add it up across the university in the same way. What you can do is say what's the trend in an individual faculty, and we can see that trend. But what we couldn't do is add the data up and then share it on a university basis. We can now and have been doing that for the last 2 years, which is why you also see that trend developing here as well. I would want to see that trend continue for the future for 2 reasons. One, because it gives us more of an opportunity to invest the margin that's developed in that in our core academic activities. And secondly, because some of the early results we're getting from benchmarking data. A number of you will have contributed to gathering data over about this time last year. We've been analysing that data. We did it alongside 9 other like universities, Russell Group universities. A further 5 are joining this summer and collecting the data, and that will have more than half the Russell Group participating. There's likely to be some further expansion. What that data shows is that relative to our size, Manchester invests more within the professional support services in terms of staff costs than the other 8 rather, institutions that are contributing to the benchmarking data. Now we're looking at that hard at the moment. We're investing more at about 11% more than what you would predict us to do, because in some areas that's very understandable. You can look at it activity by activity. And I gave the example earlier of development and alumni relations, where we've been investing more based upon a business case, and that's getting a return for us in terms of philanthropic income that's coming in. All this is measuring is the cost, not the benefit of making the investment. So there are some areas that we look at and we say, we actually understand that. That's a very positive decision strategically we've made, that that's an area we want to invest in. In some of the other areas of activity, we're puzzled as to why we seem to be investing more than other Russell Group institutions, and we'll look at those areas and see if there are opportunities for us to be able to do things more efficiently and more effectively, and therefore we expect that the data will drive performance improvement as we go forward. We'll collect that data again this time next year. We'll see whether there's any changes in the trends over a period of time, but it'll become part of our annual performance cycle, and we'll use the data to identify opportunities where we may be investing more at higher cost without there being a strategic reason for us to do so. One of the other enabling strategies is world-class estates, and over the last 12 months we've been getting very, very good at knocking things down. So this is the Alliance Manchester Business School Bridge. That's actually Oxford Road, would you believe? It looks like something horrible has happened, but that was Oxford Road when it was completed. We have knocked it down. The challenge for Diana's team is actually to build the damn thing again. So this is what it would look like in a couple of years' time, both from the hotel development perspective, going through the business school west, and into the precinct. And in time, we'll go over to MBS East as well. We've been knocking other bridges down. This is the Faraday Bridge, and that's part of the enabling work associated with the Graphene Engineering Innovation Centre, the GEIC, as it is fondly known, which is beginning to get, you see the foundations becoming there. And the biggest one of all is what we're doing on MECD, the Manchester Engineering Campus development. This is in total about a £350 million scheme. It's the biggest scheme that we think there's ever been in UK higher education. This is a photograph taken from the National Graphene Institute. You see a big pile of rubble there, and in time we would expect the new MECD hall to come rising out of the ground. And those of you who haven't heard, this is an absolute beast of a building. It goes from opposite the National Graphene Institute down to and incorporated in to Oddfellows, and it's described as a ground scraper. And the concept there is if you took it off the ground and stood it up on its end, it would be taller than the Bentham Tower. So it is a huge, huge building, and a very important one in terms of our academic development on the campus, because it allows us to bring the engineering schools from the North Campus and bring them into the main part of the site. One of the other enabling strategies is a reputation for excellence. There's a couple of things, or perhaps one thing in particular, I'd want to point to here, and that's the work that many of you have contributed to on our digital and social media profile. You don't often get statistics like this, but we went from being 65th in higher education, judged by a series of particular measures, to 5th in a single year as a result of the work that was done. So if you were engaged in that project, that's a very clear recognition for the quality of the work that was done and the improvement that can be seen. I am now going to go into awards and prizes, if I may. I'll rattle through these. At the beginning of August, at the beginning of the academic year, we were one of only 8 institutions who were awarded the Race Equality Charter Mark. We then got the rather interestingly named Lovey Award for the work that was done on the website. The website, when I first came to university, when I went across the university, the thing I got most complaints about was our website, so I particularly wanted to shout out the improvements here. You've seen it in the other material, but it was also being recognised externally, and this is one of those awards where it wasn't within the higher education sector, it was on a cross-sector basis and beat many others. One of the other things that has been often criticised about the university is the standard of some of the new buildings that we're putting up, and early this academic year I went along with colleagues from across the university to an award for the best new building in Manchester. There were 6 buildings nominated for that award. One of those was the Whitworth Art Gallery, only 6 across the whole of Manchester. A second of those was the National Graphene Institute, and a third was the Cancer Research Facility out opposite the Patterson. So of those new buildings in Manchester coming through in that particular year, half of the ones that were nominated were from the university. And the particular building that won was the Whitworth Art Gallery, but actually I think overall the university won in terms of those awards because it demonstrated the quality of the new buildings that we're bringing on stream. Nationally, the Whitworth Art Gallery was nominated for the RIBA Sterling Prize, which is the highest award in UK architecture. Just being nominated for that is a fantastic achievement in its own right. It won the People's Prize, but unfortunately it didn't win the Judges' Prize on the day. And we've just heard in the last month or so that National Graphene Institute has now also been nominated for the RIBA Sterling Prize as well. So of those 3 buildings that were recognised, 2 have gone forward to the most prestigious award in UK architecture. And we'll look forward to having a good night out, I hope, the team will anyway, at the Sterling Prize. We won't expect to win it. It'd be very unusual for a building like NGI to win it, but just being nominated is a very, very substantial achievement. The estates team had also got other recognition. They were at the Ord conference, which is the Association of University Directors of Estates. The team won the Impact Initiative of the Year award, but also Diana got a personal recognition for the contribution that she's made on a national basis over many years. She's a former chair of Ord. I know she doesn't like receiving awards on a personal basis, but this was a significant recognition from her colleagues across the sector. Other awards, prizes, recognition. We have a world record on campus with the CPR work that was done earlier in the year, a new Guinness World Record, and the Purple Run, Purple Wave, and part of the Great Manchester Run, over 1,100 staff and students taking part, and a significant amount of money raised as a consequence of that for local charities. It's been a busy year with the Queen as well. So the School Governor Initiative, another one of the social responsibility signature programs, received the Queen's Award for Voluntary Service. I like the hats in this particular photograph. And we've had 2 members of the Professional Support Services who received MBEs this year. Marcia Odie in the Faculty of Humanities, and Terry Priest, who works in the Faculty of Life Sciences. Terry has received his recently. Marcia, I think, has still got that trip to come, and that's a photograph only from about, I think it's 2-3 weeks ago, Paula, of Terry receiving his award. So the work that we've done internally has not only been recognised within the university, but it's also been recognised across the sector and outside the sector as well. I'm now going to change tack a little and look forward. We have got major changes happening external to the university. And when I was preparing for this presentation, I was particularly going to focus upon the white paper, which is coming forward potentially, and we're still being told is going to come forward, although I have some personal sort of doubts about that. But the Minister is saying that it will be brought forward to Parliament and formally progressed, and that will be a significant change in the sort of landscape of higher education, particularly in England, because it will bring, HEFCE will be abolished, there'll be a new Office for Students, there'll be a split in governance between research and teaching. UKRI, UK Research Innovation, will be established, which should take some accountability at HEFCE, but then bring all the research councils together. The Teaching Excellence Framework will be established, and in order to, quote, level the playing field, new opportunities will be put in place for private providers to be able to enter the market for higher education and make it easier for them to enter and to be described as being a university. This is a significant change. It's the same direction of travel. I would suggest that there's been, actually across the last 3 governments, we're all heading in this direction, but this is a major sort of acceleration, if I can put it that way, in the intent to move further in this direction. And there's a whole series of challenges that presents to us, not just the University of Manchester, but across UK and particularly English higher education. Notwithstanding that, we woke up a couple of weeks ago to find Nigel Farage celebrating. I went to bed having heard him concede, and then woke up a few hours later to find, as I guess many people did, that it hadn't quite gone as he had thought and perhaps some of us had hoped. But that led to major other changes externally, with the Prime Minister's resignation, and until last week I was intending to put a third slide in here that had Boris Johnson on it, but a week's a long time, a day's a long time in politics at the moment. These are major changes externally. They will have an impact upon the institution, and it's really important at this time that we recognise the role that we play as a university, the role that we play in the world as a university, the diverse communities we have within the university itself, but also the work that we do across boundaries, across national boundaries, across continents, and we've got to protect and help to support our place in the wider world. And it's one of the reasons why Nancy has been very expressive about this. Those of you who've seen this month's Communicate will see she's making reference to it again within that. I've put my own words onto that as well, but it is really crucial that we remain a welcoming, open, outward-looking institution, because we can't do what we are challenged to do as a university by becoming more insular in our outlook. Just to confirm here as well, we have offered 2 events next week for staff and students. Recognise that the whole student body is not here at the moment, but we have a large number of students who are here at the moment to meet with senior members of the university. The staff session is on Monday at 4 o'clock. The student session is on Thursday morning at 9:30. They're not, if you want to go to one but not the other, you're not constrained in going to the student one if you're a staff member, or the other way around. We just recognise that the sorts of issues that people may wish to talk about may be slightly different between those 2 groups. We don't have any information that's not already public, but we can confirm what we do know, and we can also listen to any concerns or questions that staff members may have. I think within about a couple of hours of offering the Monday session, we had 250 people signed up almost immediately. So we know this is an important issue across the institution. We have our own challenges internally. This is a quote from Nancy in terms of Manchester 2020 about being adaptable, nimble, able to make choices in order to ensure that we're well placed for whatever the future will bring. This is something that she wrote and refreshed in 2015. This is not being refreshed or written post the events of the last couple of months, and it is much a challenge to us now as it was at that time. In terms of professional support services, we are here in order to contribute towards the university's overall strategy, so supporting our colleagues in terms of their aims and ambitions on research and learning, teaching and students, and also in respect to social responsibility. We have to keep focused on that. We will have to look at new ways of doing things. That's inevitably part of what you have to do in a large organisation. The external and internal challenges we face will probably accelerate that. That's almost inevitable. There'll be more change happening externally that we're going to have to respond to than we would have otherwise have expected. We will need to analyse the benchmarking data and look hard at that and see if there are any opportunities for us within it. And as part of a broader approach across the university, we are seeking to simplify things where we can and operate with more standardised approaches. We see a number of opportunities there that contribute towards student experience, to staff experience, and to our efficiency and effectiveness. These are the university priorities for 16-17. Looking at the refreshed research strategy, and seeking to improve our teaching performance. TEF will put an additional focus upon that, carrying on with our distinctive social responsibility programme and broadening it out, as you've seen from the ethical grand challenges work. We do need to create the financial headroom to invest in our future ambitions, and we'll be looking for additional funding streams. Open learning and distance learning is an example of that, seeking efficiencies in order that we can invest strategically in the areas that we wish to grow. And efficiency and effectiveness through simplification and standardisation will be one of the mechanisms that we use. Within PSS, we have to support, therefore, that research activity. We have to support our learning teaching activity with a particular focus here on league tables and preparation for the TEF, which is coming our way. Social responsibility again, delivering the cost savings that are built into our future budget plans as they are built into faculty plans, and looking to deliver real improvements in our university-wide processes. In summary, I would say three things. First of all, four things. First of all, to stay focused. There's a lot of turbulence going on externally. My wife had a large group of people around for a book club reading last night at our home. They spent about 15 minutes on the book, and they spent about an hour and a half on Brexit and all the implications of that for the world. They wanted to do that. They were doing that in their personal time. When we come into work, we will have to remain focused on carrying on, focusing on delivering the very high quality of outputs that we have from Manchester, and particularly within the PSS community, supporting those activities. So we have to remain focused and deliver our contribution towards the strategic objectives. Simplification, standardisation I've emphasised, and I would also emphasise working together as a single team. That's something, in a large organisation is always difficult to achieve. We've got about 4,500 people working in the professional support services across the university. We've got academic colleagues that we're engaging with, and sometimes we operate within the particular silos we have of our own directorate or department, or even within a group within our own directorate and department. And the key opportunities for us in improving things are in the things typically that run across the institution rather than running down the individual silos. And therefore I'll continue to commend that to you, and certainly that's how I'm operating with my senior reports. I'll stop there, Malcolm, and I'll gladly take any questions. And if I say to those who are watching on the video stream, we're going to cut at this point. Thank you for watching, but I want to take questions from the people in the audience. I saw a hand